I know. Everyone was expecting to have Matt Lawson in here to do a Q&A, to answer all your Dynasty questions that you submitted yesterday on Twitter or on YouTube. We're delaying it one day. That's okay. More time for you guys to submit any Dynasty-related questions you have, and it's more for us to answer, so it'll be even better content, more for us to talk about. All good there. So we're delaying it one more day, but today I'm going to take the opportunity to go through my top 12 players in Dynasty leagues. We'll start at number 12 and go all the way up to number 1, where there probably won't be any spoilers, or any surprises. So I won't give a spoiler for it, because if you don't know, then you really need to stick around and wait for the end of this episode to figure out who that is. Odds are you probably already know. But we'll start with number 12 here in a moment, and we'll talk a little bit about why I have them ranked the way they do, or the way I do, the upside, what type of team you'd want to build with this specific player, with each specific player, how competitive you think you'll want to be. Generally speaking, most of these guys, you'll be able to be very competitive in year one. But then some of them are going to be more of like hey, we have a little bit more of a shorter window. We need to really emphasize trying to win now. And then some of them, it's like, yeah, you do want to try and win now, but they're also young enough that you could draft a little younger, and they're still going to be really good in a couple of years when the rest of your team gets better. And then there's a couple guys that I'd just be like, hey, actually, it may just be one guy where I'm like, hey, I'm going to take him in the first round, but the intention to be really bad in year one. And it's not because this player is bad, but it's because he's a rookie. Again, not going to spoil it, but if you don't know, you really need to stick around and watch this entire video to figure out who that is. But we're going to start with number 12, and I'm not going to show my whole Dynasty rankings. I want to keep a little bit, some of it under wraps. I mentioned this yesterday. I'm still in the middle of a Dynasty startup, and we'll have more Dynasty startups and such coming up. So I'm going to keep it under wraps just a little bit longer. But hopefully we'll get it posted soon, fully fleshed out and full rankings. But since we're well past the first round, and I don't think that you're getting a dramatic advantage in the first round in the Dynasty League by seeing where I have players ranked, have no problems talking about it. So we're going to start off with my number 12 player, and that is Jalen Johnson, who plays for the Hawks, obviously. The number 20 overall pick in 2021, 23 years old, coming off averaging 18.9 points per game, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, also average 1.6 steals, 1 block, 1.2 threes, shot 50% from the floor. Pretty subpar at the free throw line, 74.6%, but only 3.5 attempts per game. It's a tad surprising. Just looking at the players that were ranked ahead of him in 9-cat leagues, because he was 21st in per game. Now he only played 36 games because of the shoulder injuries. But players that averaged fewer than 3.5 free throw attempts per game that were ranked, that finished ahead of him in 9-cat rankings: Nikola Vucevic, Dyson Daniels, Tyrese Halliburton. Now, I don't know about you guys, but my observations of these players is that Jalen Johnson is at the rim and hit the air at the rim more than any of them. So hopefully, as he gets more respect to his name, we'll see the free throw attempts go up, and maybe he'll be able to improve on that a little bit, because he's already improved the three-point shot. So hopefully we'll be able to see him improve on the free throw shooting as well. Now, this is also a player that would have probably been in consideration for most improved player last year. Dyson Daniels ended up winning it, but Jalen Johnson, had he been healthy, probably would have been in the conversation for it. Didn't end up happening, but a player that has taken great strides each of the last 2 seasons, and honestly, I'm expecting him to be even better next year than he has been over the last 2 seasons since he really entered the rotation. But if he's just improving in the sense that he improves his availability, that's more than enough for me. Like I said, this is a guy that was a second-round value in 9-cat leagues last season, despite it being his second as a full-time starter, as an actual player playing legitimate minutes, and was an incredible player when he was on the floor. The Hawks were a better team when he was on the floor. So I would be very comfortable in a 12-team league starting my team with Jalen Johnson in the first round, which is a pretty dramatic step up from what he was 2 years ago or even last year at this time. But I would be comfortable taking him in the first round. And just to kind of hint at this, that part of this is the sense that Tyrese Halliburton and Jason Tatum won't be playing next season, so they drop down the rankings. So they're outside the top 12. LaMelo Ball, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Trae Young are also just right outside the top 12. I'd be more comfortable taking Jalen Johnson. He's a little younger than Giannis, Trae Young, and just genuinely just a little younger than LaMelo, I believe. Actually, let me double check that as I'm saying that, because if LaMelo Ball definitely is actually, yeah, so he's younger than LaMelo by about 4 months. Huge advantage you're getting there in your Dynasty League by taking Jalen Johnson, because he's so much younger than LaMelo Ball. No, but I'm not super concerned about the injuries. It was shoulder injuries this year. It was ankles the year before. It's not the recurring injury of the, hey, it's this chronic knee issue, or hey, his ankles don't stay healthy. It was ankles, and then last year it was shoulders. So a player that's a high flyer like him, maybe you do anticipate ankle injuries here and there, but shoulder injuries are freak accidents, nothing you can really bank on or predict. So not expecting that to be a lingering issue. Hopefully won't continue to be an issue. He'll be able to have a healthy year coming up. And by the way, this will be 4 different tiers of players. This is tier 4. So tier 4, number 12 overall, Jalen Johnson. The next player in my rankings is also in the same tier 4, but he is ranked 11th. That is another Jalen, actually. It is Jalen Williams, J-Dub, who just won an NBA championship last season, or this past season. Averaged 21.6 points, 5.3 rebounds, 5.1 assists, 1.6 steals, 1.8 threes per game. Shot 48.4% from the floor, 78.9% from the line. Couple things here. The field goal percentage and free throw percentage were both low for Jalen Johnson or Jalen Williams this year. The worst of his career. His first 2 years in the league, he shot 52.1 and 54% from the floor. So being sub 50% at all was a pretty drastic step down for him. And free throw percentage was at 81.2 and 81.4% his first 2 years. The attempts did go up this past season, but the free throw percentage was down, like I said, 78.9%. I would expect the percentages to improve next year. And, part of it is a change, I guess, an increase in responsibility, an increase in usage, an increase in minutes, an increase in shot attempts. So, as you shoot more, if the percentage goes down, that's fair. It happens. So, but I'm also expecting him to be a little bit better next year, to see those numbers go up a little bit. In 9-cat per game value, he was 24th this past season across 69 games played, which were also a career low for him. He's been very durable through his first 3 years, 75, 71, and 69 games. That's a good thing, somebody you want to build around. He's 24 years old, won't turn 25 until the end of next regular season. Was the number 12 pick in 2022. There's a lot to like about Jalen Williams, and you feel pretty confident in what the Thunder have. They have so many different guys, but it's built around SGA, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen Williams specifically. We will, spoiler alert, talk about all 3 today. Jalen Williams is ranked the lowest among the 3, but still a top 12 player in Dynasty leagues to me. So have no issues starting my Dynasty team off with Jalen Williams at all. Really, really good fantasy player, very productive, well-rounded skill set. The points and steals are his strongest categories, but it's still decent at rebounds, decent at assists, decent at threes. Fairly efficient, more so in the past than this year. But I'm not I'm not concerned about a guy shooting 48.4% from the floor. Like that's it's not a negative there. So he's just a well-rounded player, and that's totally fine to start your team. It's actually probably a good thing to start your team like that with a player that you feel confident isn't going to hurt you or anything. It doesn't limit how you build your team. You can start your team however you want, or start with Jalen Williams in the next few rounds. Draft however you want. If you do want to lean into a certain strategy, you can do that with Jalen Williams. And I said I was going to mention this, I didn't with Jalen Johnson. Both those guys are players that are pretty young, but you can definitely win with next year and win with them as your first round pick. But it also, if you want to go a little younger, they're both very young players. So if you, like I said, Jalen Williams is 24. If you want to go a little younger and then try and compete in like 2 years, you can do that. And then also at the same time, if you want to go all in, you can do that immediately too. And a lot of times in Dynasty, it's not the best strategy to try and decide your team's direction as soon as, or like in the middle of the draft or at the beginning of the draft. Maybe you want to just go best player available. And I think that is probably the right decision. And you can do that with Jalen Williams as well. The next player that we're going to talk about is, so we talked about a guy from the 2021 class, 2022 class. Now we're going to talk about a guy from the 2023 class, and that is Amen Thompson, the top-ranked Houston Rocket in my Dynasty rankings. Still in Tier 4, have him number 10 overall. He took drastic strides this past season and developed into a permanent starter for the Rockets. And we saw his numbers improve this past season, and we saw him take nice strides, but we can still see more. And if you think that Amen Thompson, who averaged 14.1 points, 8.2 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.4 steals, 1.3 blocks, shot 55.7% from the floor, if you think that he still has room to improve, if you think Amen Thompson can still take another step forward, you can prove that. And how you do that is you go to our partners at FanDuel, you go to their website, sportsbook.fanduel.com, you go down to awards, you go to most improved player, and you can easily see, as I pull this up, that Amen Thompson is plus 1,700 to win most improved player of the year. So if you think that Amen Thompson still can take another step forward, this is a great place to actually reap the rewards from that. The current leader, I guess it's two leaders in most improved player, are Denny Avdia and Andrew Nembhard. We saw Avdia take a nice step forward this past season, especially over the course of the year after a slow start in his first year in Portland. And then Nembhard, obviously the expectations are high for him to take over for Tyrese Halliburton this season, with Halliburton out for the year. Tied with Amen Thompson at plus 1,700 is Benedict Mathurin. If you saw the awesome interview of Rick Carlisle by Caitlin Cooper earlier today or yesterday, I don't know, I don't remember exactly, or I guess it was posted earlier today, where Rick Carlisle said that Benedict Mathurin is going to be the starter at shooting guard. That's why he's so high in the most improved player, is because we know that Benedict Mathurin is going to be the starter. Then we have Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, and Jalen Johnson, who should take a step forward this year, as we just talked about. A lot of interesting, exciting young guys. But if you really believe in Amen Thompson, it's a great place to prove it. So make sure to check that out. That's with our partners at FanDuel, sportsbook.fanduel.com. You can make all sorts of bets on the NBA. But we're going to get back to talking about fantasy basketball, specifically in Dynasty leagues, with Amen Thompson, who I would take 10th overall in a Dynasty startup. I mentioned his numbers a bit ago, but I'm going to repeat them. 14.1 points, 8.2 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.4 steals, 1.3 blocks, 55.7% from the floor. He doesn't shoot threes. His free throw percentage isn't great, 68.4%. But everything else is great. And I said this with Jalen Williams, that you can build a little bit more of a well-rounded team or not have to choose a direction. And the same thing can be said here with Amen Thompson. He's 22 years old, won't turn 23 until January. You can draft Amen Thompson and then draft better shooters around him and have a well-rounded team. Or you could, I'm not saying this is the right decision, but it is a strategy. Say, I'm not going to draft anyone that is reliant on shooting threes. I'm going to lean in and I'm going to go ahead and punt threes. I'm not going to prioritize points or free throw percentage. And that gives you a really clear direction to build your team. It does limit certain players. If you're punting points and threes and free throw percentage, you're probably not going to want to take Tyler Hero in a few rounds, but the team chemistry issues that Tyler Hero and Amen Thompson being on your team anyway, probably don't want to do that. But those two players aren't super compatible in the sense that they don't, I guess, produce in the same categories. If you want to build a well-rounded team that offsets Amen Thompson's weaknesses, Tyler Hero be good for that. But if you want to lean into the strengths and avoid the weaknesses, then Tyler Hero isn't the best player for you. So if you look at rankings and see where Tyler Hero's ranked, and you're starting your team with Amen Thompson and want to lean into his strengths and avoid his weaknesses, you do not value Tyler Hero the same way. He does not hold the same value on your team. There are other players that are going to be ranked lower that you will hold to a higher standard or have more value for that are ranked lower than Tyler Hero. And that's okay. That's part of building the team in a category dynasty league. Points leagues is different. There's not as much of that strategy of team fit. So it's totally fine. But in a category league, if you're leaning into those certain things, that limits who you can have or who would be best on your team. But Amen Thompson is a tremendously talented player with loads of upside and is definitely a guy that I would be comfortable taking with the 10th overall pick in a dynasty startup. Still part of tier 4. The last player that will round out tier 4 is the second Oklahoma City Thunder player that we're going to be talking about today, and that is Chet Holmgren, who's coming off I guess we can call it a down season. I think that's fair to call it a down season. He averaged 15 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists. Pulling up the rest of the numbers. 2.2 blocks, shot 49% from the floor, 75.4% from the line, 1.4 threes. But honestly, I want to go back to the year before because we'll recap his whole career real quick. Drafted number 2 overall in 2022, missed his whole rookie year after a freak accident, playing in I think it was a Pro-Am game against LeBron. I don't even remember if I think LeBron just stepped on his foot and some like a random bone fractured and he was out for the whole season. And it was, just to be clear, that's not like this guy's too skinny. That's like even if he was a little bit, like he still is a skinny player, and he was skinnier as a rookie than he is now. And he had LeBron James, who's not a skinny player, step on his foot. So sure, it was a freak accident. I don't think that was like he's too skinny, so that's why it happened. But obviously that agenda can be pushed by people who want to. Year 2, fixed that. Played 82 games, 29.4 minutes per game. This past season, had the freak hip injury in November, forced him to miss 3 months, and then his minutes were kind of limited for a bit. He only played over 30 minutes a handful of times after, honestly, over the course of the season. Let's count them out. Twice in October, once in November. He reached exactly 30 minutes. Let's see. Got over 30 minutes twice in February. 4 times in March. And then twice in April. That's it. That's the only times he played over 30 minutes last season. But there was also no reason for him to. OKC was so far high up in the standings that there was no reason for them to play Chet Holmgren a ton of minutes. So we'll see his minutes go up next year. We should see if he's able to stay healthy, we'll see his games played go up next year. But if we're looking at what he did during his rookie year, which is his second year after being drafted, he averaged 16.5 points, 7.9 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 2.3 steals. Pretty similar to what he did this past year, just a little bit inflated everywhere except rebounds was down 0.1, 1.6 threes. But he shot 53% from the floor, 79.3% from the line, and was 20th in per game value in 9-cat leagues. That's more in line with what I expect we'll see next season. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him get over 30 minutes per game, see a career high in minutes, see a career high in a bunch of other stuff. And we could continue to see that go up. Like, he'll share the floor with Isaiah Hartenstein at times, but he'll also just play the 5 at times. He's a really dynamic 7-foot player that is built for fantasy basketball. So, yeah, I'm very comfortable taking Chet at number 9 overall in a Dynasty startup to wrap up tier 4. Okay, the next player that I have, this is the start of tier 3. So this is, I would probably say anyone we've talked about, you can kind of interchange to this point. Would definitely take them over anyone else that's ranked lower. But I think if you wanted to say, hey, no, I actually want to take Jalen Johnson at 9, I'm fine with that. Other people might say, whoa, that's a little bit too high because they're a little lower on Jalen Johnson than 12. So to bump him all the way up to 9. But I think to me, that's how I would, that's the tier. That's how I'd rank them, but that's also the tier. They're pretty similar. This is a tier up. Would not take any of the guys we talked about over the next handful of players. Anthony Edwards is 8th to me. And I know that's probably a touch lower than most other dynasty rankings that you'll see. He's coming off his best season as a pro, averaged career highs with 27.6 points and 4.1 threes per game. Both were career highs. The steals were still solid, 1.2, but were the worst of his career. 5.7 rebounds, 4.5 assists, both solid. 44.7% from the floor was the lowest since his rookie year. 83.7% from the line was his career best by literally 0.1%. Plays a ton of minutes, plays a ton of games. Played 72 games during his rookie year. That's how many games were played that season. And then, I think, maybe it was back to normal. And then he just happened to play 70. So 21-22. Yeah, because 1920 was the bubble. 2021 was the 72-game season. So it was actually back to normal. Am I doing that right? Okay. He played 72 games during his rookie year. Okay, there was 82 games played that year. Okay, forget everything that just happened for the past 45 seconds. Waste of time. Played 72 games his rookie year, missed 10. Since then, he's played 79, 79, 79. Has consistently gotten better each year. I'm going to just a touch lower on him because the points and threes are excellent. The rebounds, assists, and steals are solid. I'd say borderline good, but at least solid. The free throw percentage has improved. It's pretty good. The field goal percentage is a little lower. The blocks are 0.6 blocks doesn't do anything. The turnovers, who cares? So right now you're looking at a guy that hits a ton of threes and scores a lot, and everything else is solid. And that's a fine way to start your team because he is a really good player. But I think some of the other guys ahead are more dynamic in more categories, and that's why I'm a little bit higher on them than I am on Anthony Edwards. But there's other people that'll have him ranked a couple spots higher than this, as high as 5, I think. And again, this is tier 3. Tier 3 is players 5 through 8. So if you take Anthony Edwards at 5, I have no issues. He's just at the bottom part of this tier for me. Now, if we see him bump the assists up, maybe he gets his career high is 5.1. If he gets to a point where he's just such a good playmaker that he's averaging 6+ assists per game, maybe he's more active on the glass and gets to 6.5 rebounds per game. Maybe his career high is 1.6 steals. That's a pretty big difference to be between 1.6 and 1.2 with a stat like steals. A 0.4 difference is a little bit bigger than other stats if we can see him maybe put an emphasis on forcing turnovers and see his steals increase, that would convince me to bump him up a couple spots because I think he's one of the most talented players in the league. But I think based on what we've seen, I'm a touch lower than most people on Anthony Edwards, because most people would probably have him in the 5 to 6 range, maybe at 7 for Dynasty. But there is one player that most people probably don't have in this same tier that I do, that I am very high on and I'm a huge believer in. And I've done this thing when I'm making my Dynasty rankings of, well, other people have him lower and maybe I'm just wrong about this. And then telling myself, no, like, you're making the rankings. You decide. Don't let other people influence that. And that's something that why I have to avoid reading other people's rankings, is because I don't want to be influenced, because it happens. But Evan Mobley is a guy that I'm tremendously high on. And I think a lot of people like Evan Mobley, but I don't think too many people have him ranked 7th in their Dynasty rankings, but I'm just a huge believer. And I think I've really liked what we've seen as far as his improvement. This past season, averaged 18.5 points, 9.3 rebounds, 3.2 assists, 1.6 blocks, 1.2 threes, 55.7% from the floor. Free throw percentage continues to improve at 72.5%. Not great, but he's shooting 4.3 attempts per game, and it's consistently improving. So that's a good sign. We saw him really expand his range this past season. 1.2 threes per game is like, he's a threat from outside. Obviously, he can score. The rebounds are strong. He's a good shot blocker. He's a pretty good passer for a near 7-footer. But it's this, we're just waiting on it to happen. We're waiting on Evan Mobley and Jared Allen to not be on the same basketball team. And I'm not saying that from a sense of, hey, this is best for the Cavs, because I don't know. Like, I think that's probably a longer, deeper conversation. But for what I think is better for Evan Mobley's career, statistically, specifically, is a split. For Jared Allen to be elsewhere and Evan Mobley to be center. Because what we see then is we probably see his attempts at the rim go up, but his shot attempts in general go up. His points go up. His rebounds go up. His blocks go up. We see all of these probably pretty drastic improvements. Now, he also only played 30.5 minutes per game this past season, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that Cleveland blew everyone out. Like, pretty often was blowing teams out, and had some games where Evan Mobley just didn't need to play a lot. Now, there were, he wasn't playing like 36 minutes per game and then they just blew everyone out. So now he's playing 30 minutes per game. It was probably closer to like 32 or 33 without the blowouts. Maybe it's not that drastic of a difference, but I don't necessarily think that's something that we can run. Hopefully we'll see Evan Mobley play closer to 32 or 33 minutes per game. But I think that the talent here is just too great for me to have him ranked any lower than this. And I think once we see that happening, and it's probably not going to be like the trade deadline, maybe it's next summer if the Cavs don't like have much playoff success again. But I think Evan Mobley has still been really, really productive, even with sharing the floor with Jared Allen, which is why I'm pretty comfortable with him here, because he's been really productive. He's been very good. But I think everyone knows that there's this other level that he can reach if he is the starting center for a team. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it is going to happen. He's 24 years old. There's plenty of time. Evan Mobley is top tier fantasy player, or is a top tier fantasy player year after year, just waiting on this one more move to happen. All right, moving on to number 6 on my rankings, still in tier 3. We've got everyone's favorite riser. I've been high on Cade Cunningham for a while, and now I feel like I'm lower on him than other people, because he was a guy that I felt like I was talking about with Evan Mobley, that I kept bumping him just a spot or two lower in my rankings because, well, other people did too. And I was like, well, shoot, maybe I'm missing something with Cade Cunningham. So I'm going to drop him a spot or two. I don't think I ever had him leave my top 10. I'm going to double check that because maybe I did. And I don't want to lie. Okay, I did. On June 2024, I had him at 11. Which I think was the lowest. February 2024, I had him at 12. I'm lying. 13, January 2024. Wow, full of lies, Noah. Okay. But so it turns out I had him outside the top 10 more often than I didn't. So I was very wrong there. But I don't think I wanted to. My heart wanted him to be in the top 10. Now, I think most people have him at 5. I have him at 6. And I think that this comes down to something I've said a couple times on this show, and I think on other shows as well, is what would I do when I'm on the clock? What would I honestly do? Now, Cade Cunningham averaged 26.1 points, 6.1 rebounds, 9.1 assists, a steal, 0.8 blocks, 2.1 threes per game this past season, played 35 minutes per game, had his breakout year. He is a star now. He is an all-star. He is probably a signature playoff series away from being a superstar. And I think nobody would argue with you if you said, no, I think he is a superstar. He is that talented. I just don't think he has that legacy moment yet that kind of pushed him into superstar status, but a superstar talent. I think that's a fair way to put it. We'll be 24 by the time next season starts, but he's 23 right now. The stats were incredible. I'm not expecting maybe a slight bump in the field goal percentage because he is a bigger, stronger guard, but obviously still shoots a lot of jumpers. The turnovers are pretty poor, 4.4 per game this past season, but again, who cares? They're just turnovers. Not really expecting many players that you're going to draft in the first round because to not have a lot of turnovers because most of them have the ball in their hands the whole game, which is fine. So it's none of that. All of that is enough for him to be top 5. But I want my rankings to reflect how I would actually draft. And if I'm on the clock with the number 5 overall pick, we'll go ahead and I'll pull him up on the screen. I'm going to take Cooper Flagg. And this isn't actually, I'm going to leave Cade Cunningham on the screen and just talk about Cooper Flagg at the same time because Cooper Flagg doesn't have an NBA.com page yet because he hasn't accumulated any stats, or at least not one that's easily accessible to me. So I'm going to take Cooper Flagg over Cade Cunningham. And a lot of that has to do with draft strategy. So if I'm talking about how I'm going to trade for players, and maybe it would be Cade Cunningham holds more value than Cooper Flagg this time. But if I'm starting a draft and the top 4 guys are gone, I have the number 5 overall pick, which I think is a great, fun spot to start a dynasty league. I'm taking Cooper Flagg, and then I'm not drafting a single player over the age of 21. And I'm going super, super young. And I'm having my sights set on a top pick in 2026. And I'm going to start my dynasty league with Cooper Flagg and then one of Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, or AJ DeBonza. That would be my goal. I'm hoping that can happen in some sort of dynasty start this year. I got the number 2 pick in the International House of Hoops League, so I win SGA. But if I were the number 5 pick, I'm taking Cooper Flagg and I'm building my team for the future. I think Cooper Flagg's going to have a really good rookie year and be really productive. But I'm probably just going to focus on building for the future. That's not a knock on Cade Cunningham. If you take Cade Cunningham at 5, I think it is a really good pick. But I think my rankings are going to reflect how I would draft. I would take Cooper Flagg over Cade Cunningham. And it is more about how I would operate for the rest of the draft. That's it. But that is going to wrap up tier 3. And now we're going to go into tier 2. There's 2 tiers left. And it's going to start with a player that I think is the most win now of the players that we've talked about. It's Nikola Jokic, who is 30 years old, but is also the best player in fantasy basketball. or at least in the conversation with the top three. He averaged 29.6 points, 12.7 rebounds, 10.2 assists, 1.8 steals, 2 threes per game last year, which was a career high, by the way. Shot 57.6% from the floor because, why would an increase in 3-point rate negatively impact Jokic's field goal percentage, which I suppose it did. 57.6% was the lowest since the 2020-2021 season when he shot 56.6%. So, I guess it was a drop. If you're dropping to 57.6%, then I think that's okay. 29.6 points per game was a career high for Jokic as well. 10.2 assists per game were a career high. 1.8 steals per game were a career high. So Jokic just had all these career highs. Jokic, who's been the number one player in per game value in 4 of the last 5 seasons. There doesn't really need to be a strong argument because the argument presents itself. Like, Jokic is the best player per game in 9-cat fantasy basketball and has been for basically the past half decade. Literally has in all but one season the past half decade when he finished 3rd. So, yeah, we know what Jokic is. We know that there's nobody else like him. We know we're probably going to get that again next year. And by the way, the year that he was 3rd in per game value, it was SGA in front of him at 2, and then Joel Embiid at 1, but Embiid played 39 games. So it was a down year for Jokic, but he was still there. So that's why Jokic is at 4, because he's 1, probably going to be the best player in fantasy basketball again next year. But 2, the reason he's not higher is he's 30. The players that we have above are at least a few years younger. All of them are. I mean, Wemby, SGA, and Luka Doncic. Luka's 26, SGA's 27, yeah. And then Wemby's like 21. Yeah. So it's that sort of advantage where Jokic is on the wrong side of 30. So I'd rather take someone that's a couple years younger. That's really it. If you take Jokic at 2 or 3, I'm totally fine. Not going to get mad at you. The number 3 player that I have is Luka Doncic, who's now with the Lakers and looks good. I don't know if anyone has seen, but there have been pictures swirling or videos swirling. They're talking about skinny Luka. Luka Doncic looks good. You compare pictures from how he looked at this time, or I guess when he got traded to the Lakers versus now, he looks to be in great shape. And it probably isn't the worst thing to consider him as one of the favorites for MVP. And if you go to our partner's website at FanDuel and check it out, he's currently 3rd in the MVP race. The preseason MVP lines have Jokic at 3. And of the top 6, and if you're watching, you can see this, but it's SGA plus 200, Jokic plus 250, Luka plus 500. Giannis is the only guy we haven't talked about. He's at plus 1,000. Like I guess I did mention, I think he was at 14. Wemby, who we'll talk about soon, plus 1,700. Anthony Edwards plus 2,100. That's the top 6 right there. A lot of the times, Dynasty lines up with real basketball. Not 100% translation, but the overall gist of it usually lines up pretty well. If you think that skinny Luka is going to go take over the league and dominate for the Lakers, plus 500 is not terrible odds to get in on. And you can go check out FanDuel Sportsbook, and you can go ahead and get in on the action. Really easy there to check that out. Skinny Luka, maybe we'll see him take over the league, and maybe at this time next year we'll be talking about him as the number 2 player to draft in Dynasty leagues. But as of now, I'm going to take Luka 3rd. And a lot of that is that it's just technicalities. Like, I just feel a little bit more comfortable with SGA than Luka. But if you take Luka at 2 over SGA, then cool. I think that's totally fine. But we're talking about a Luka Doncic who just, everyone was talking about how much he was struggling last year, because he only averaged 28.2 points, 8.2 rebounds, 7.7 assists, 1.8 steals, 3.5 threes per game. And yes, the 45% field goal percentage was a nice step down. And yeah, I guess when you look at it, he did see his scoring drop by 5.7 points and his assists drop by 2.1 per game. And those are pretty steep drops. That's fair. But not many players stuff the stat sheet like this guy. And the percentages aren't great. They're all subpar. The turnovers are bad. They're never going to be great. And he doesn't really block shots, but you do kind of have a clear direction for how you want to build your team. Points, rebounds, assists, steals, and threes. That's 5 categories that I would say he dominates. That's a really good way to start a draft with Luka Doncic, because you're going to get one of the best or one of the leaders in points and threes and assists per game. 1.8 steals per game this past season was a nice step up. Maybe we can't bank on that, but 1.5 steals per game is very good. And then there aren't many guards that are getting 8 and 9 rebounds per game. So if you look at it in that regard, yeah, there aren't too many better players to start your draft with than Luka. But I guess the one that I will say that I would take above Luka, and that is the MVP SGA Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who averaged 32.7 points per game to go with 5 rebounds, 6.4 assists, 1.7 steals, 1 block, 2.1 threes, shot 51.9% from the floor, 89.8% from the free throw line, with only 2.4 turnovers per game. The thing you get with SGA that you don't get with Luka is he doesn't really have a weakness. Luka's weaknesses are clear. His strengths are incredible, but SGA also has really good strengths because he led the league in points per game, is not only one of the best at getting to the line, but he doesn't really miss the line. The rebounds and assists are pretty solid. They're not as good as Luka's, but they're solid. The steals are pretty similar to Luka, but they were actually down from the year before, whereas Luka's were career high. 2.1 threes per game, that'll play. That's fine. The field goal percentage is really strong for a guard, and he doesn't turn the ball over the way Luka does, and he's at a block per game, or at least was this past season. So you're getting a little bit more value in more categories, I guess, with SGA than you are with Luka. And I feel really good about the way this team is built around SGA, whereas the Lakers still have some work to do to build around Luka. I would take SGA. I did take SGA in the International House of Hoops League, and I'm excited to build around him. But it's just a little difference. And I don't want to go into this too much because I don't want to make it seem like try and make 15 points about why I have SGA above Luka, because you could take Luka too, and I would actually say cool. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that because it doesn't make sense. The last player we'll talk about is the obvious. If again, since the beginning, if you didn't know that Victor Wembanyama was the number 1 player to draft in Dynasty leagues, then I'm glad you stuck around. He's coming off averaging 24.3 points, 11 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.1 steals, 3.8 blocks, 3.1 threes, 47.6% from the floor is okay, 83.6% from the line. So why are we taking this guy? Well, through 2 years, he's averaged a 20-point double-double in both years. Over 3.5 blocks per game in both years, over a steal per game. He just hit over 3 threes per game. Did I mention this guy's 7'5"? Or 7'4" or 7'3"? It doesn't even matter who he's way taller than everyone. Different listings will tell you different things. This one on NBA.com has 7'3", but I know everyone's heard up to 7'5". Yeah. This dude's pretty good. The points are good, like very strong. The rebounds are strong and are probably only going to get better as he gets stronger. The threes are really good. The field goal percentage isn't as good as you'd expect from a guy as tall as him, but I think that'll improve as he gets stronger because it's never going to be like dominant the way Jokic is, but because he just shoots too many threes. and step back threes, he shoots tough shots. But the outlier blocks are also incredible. Like we could see him get to 4.5, 5 blocks per game at some point in his career while staying over a steal per game. He's a pretty good passer. He's at 3.9 and assists per game as a rookie and 3.7 per game this past season. The turnovers aren't great, but again, I know SGA is not as bad at turnovers, but like most players that are ranked this high are going to have the ball in their hands the whole game, so they're going to turn it over, so who cares? But there's so much room for Wemby to grow. He's 21. He's 7 foot plus, 7'3" plus, 7'5". There's nobody that's going to, like, he's going to lead the league in blocks for the next 10 to 15 years and is going to average at least a 20-point double-double for the next 10 to 15 years while still providing plenty of threes, decent amount of assists, a steal per game. In redraft leagues, I probably wouldn't take Wemby at 1. I'd probably take him at 2 behind Jokic. But you also, like, the reason it's Wemby above everyone else is the fact that he's 21. You have Jokic is 9 years older. SGA is like 5.5, and then Luka's like 5 years older. So think about what Wemby is going to be in 5 years. But you're also having that, it's most of the time I usually just say we don't need to even get into Wemby because it's so obvious the number one pick. I want to spend a couple extra minutes to actually talk about it. There shouldn't be any Wemby trades. Do not trade Wemby in your league. Now, if someone, I always say that, and then it's like, depends on what type of league you're in. I don't advise these type of trades in like random leagues you join. If you're in a league with like your close personal friends that you know aren't going to leave the league, and someone offers Luka and 8 firsts, okay, yeah, you trade Wemby. Yeah, you probably make that trade. As far as what's realistic in, like, say you join like an FBI Dynasty league or just some league you find on Twitter, like, through like other people you've played leagues with, I'm probably not going to trade Wemby because if someone offers me Luka and 3 firsts, like how good are those firsts, or like SGA and 3 firsts, that's probably what it's going to have to be. Or it's some ridiculously stacked team that has like, I don't know, Cooper Flagg and Cade Cunningham and picks. Like that could probably get you Wemby. I would just say if you have Wemby in your team, enjoy it. Don't trade him. That would be my bottom line. But that was my top 12 for Dynasty rankings. That's how I'd rank the top 12 players. Let me know if you disagree or if you think certain players should be ranked higher or lower, who was outside the top 12 that you think definitely should be in. You can let me know in the comments or tweet at me. That's totally fine. Tomorrow will be the Q&A with Matt Lawson, so make sure to get in any Dynasty questions you still have. You can follow me on Twitter at NoRuben22. This is the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Podcast, which is part of the Old Man Squad. Let's see if I can do this right. Old Man Squad Sports Network. If you're looking at the screen, you can see, which is part of the Believe Network, which we don't have on the screen, and is brought to you by FanDuel, which you can see at the top corner. That's going to do it for this episode, and I will see you guys tomorrow.